Lost Planet 3 takes place on EDN 3, which is the same planet as the other games in the franchise, but we're actually going back in time chronologically because this is the first game in the series, timeline. It's actually a prequel to Lost Planet 1. So you're going to be seeing EDN 3 in sort of its most kind of natural sort of state, when most intense conditions before man kind of came in and started really affecting the environment. We were the first really video game out there to explore the idea of this incredibly intense frozen planet. And that's really a space that we own, and I want to make sure that, we're continuing to tell stories about that, and not only, expand the world, but also show its past and its history. And that's the reason why we've gone with sort of the prequel route, so we can show the planet of EDN 3 at its most intense state. We're dealing with sort of the colonization of the planet and sort of the frontier nature of it. So exploration, discovery of resources, discovery of new areas is something that's going to be very important. And it's also something that we've really wanted to do in the series for a long time. And finally now with the technology and with the concept of the game, we're able to make it so that, you do have these high action sequences, you do have these suspenseful interior segments that you mentioned, being inside of a derelict base and kind of exploring that. But we also have these great sweeping vistas where you're both in and out of the rig and you can go out and explore. And the player is going to have the freedom to get in and out at almost any point when you're in the exterior on the planet. So, for instance, you could be walking in the rig from one location to another, find something kind of on the ground, maybe a glittering piece of metal or something, get out, investigate, maybe that will lead to a whole other side mission. So we really like the freedom that offers. In Lost Planet 1 in particular, thermal energy was used to kind of heat the main character's body so that he wouldn't freeze to death. And so it sort of almost was an artificial timer that would keep pressing you on forward throughout the levels, which was good for Lost Planet 1 because it was much more of an arcade-style shooter experience. But because we are focusing more on exploration and narrative and things like that, we wanted to remove a little bit of that artificial timer feel. And so in Lost Planet 3, the thermal energy will serve as a resource. It's a valuable commodity that the colonists are there to try to exploit. So as Jim gathers thermal energy, he'll be able to take it back to his base and then exchange that for new weapons and upgrades and things like that. A couple of things that we're doing is we're keeping, the shooting, the third-person shooting that the series is known for intact, making the controls a little bit more intuitive and more responsive, but basically shooting angry creatures on foot is going to feel, very similar to the past games. But something new is we're taking the vehicles in the game, which in Lost Planet 1 and 2 were called Vital Suits, and they were smaller, more maneuverable. They had, Gatling guns and rocket launchers and things, and we're actually showing what those would have been like in the past before they had become militarized and before they had become miniaturized. So we have something called the utility rig, which is this giant construction robot, basically, that the main character Jim uses to do different contracts, set up structures, lay pipeline, things like that. So one of the things that the player is going to find is that when they're in the utility rig, they'll be in a first-person perspective, which is something new for the franchise. And they're actually going to have to defeat the enemies using the tools on the rig itself. Things like, a drill attachment or a fork arm attachment to grab and pull. So it's a great contrast between shooting using firearms when you're outside of the rig and then kind of the more close quarters combat when you're inside the rig. We are doing multiplayer. We're not really talking about the details right now. We'll be revealing those more as we go along. What I will say is that the campaign of the game is very much single player. It's about Jim, the main character, kind of becoming him and empathizing with him and leading him through his journey. And then you'll have a separate multiplayer suite that will have different game modes that you'll be able to play. Lost Planet 3 is coming out for PS3, Xbox 360, and PC in early 2013.